Have you ever been on a walk or a drive and the rotten smell in the air makes you just want to choke? And then you hold your breath and you speed up or even walk faster so you could get out of there. I can't do that, you see. I live and I grew up in one of the most polluted zip codes in the nation where yellow ash falls from the sky, where the smell of sulfur fills the air like rotten eggs. You would think you're living in some kind of Last Days movie sometimes. But this is Commerce City, Colorado in 2022. One of my deadly neighbors is an oil refinery, the Canadian company Suncor. And it spews out deadly pollutants into our air, land, and water. So it's no surprise then that the people living in our community suffer health impacts like migraines, like bloody noses, chest pains, asthma, cancers, and even early deaths. And you know who almost always lives in these communities? It's people that look like me, people in the Latino community, in the immigrant community, in the Black and Indigenous communities. Our air, land, and water are contaminated. We are home to one of the lowest performing districts in the state. This hurts our education, our health, it even impacts our housing. This is nothing less than environmental racism. It is in communities like mine that this climate crisis was born and bred. And if we continue neglecting these communities, guess what? Everybody's land, air, and water will be impacted eventually. It's not like the air says, I'm not going to poison here and I'm not going to pollute there. The air has no city limits. Environmental racism is an issue we rarely talk about. How industries exploit and poison entire cities, towns, pueblos in the US and throughout the world, forcing entire families to flee, fueling the immigration crisis worldwide. But we can hold governments and big businesses accountable. That's what I did. Living in Commerce City, the impacts of environmental racism are nothing new. But it wasn't when I was a kid, it wasn't obvious to me. All I knew was that my family kept getting sick. My great grandma died of cancer when I was 5. My cousins were always having the bloody noses, just like my kids do now. My mom and I developed the migraines. My auntie's still fighting the cancer. And then in 2018, my grandma died of leukemia, my beautiful abuelita. Then later that year, my auntie passed away from her diabetes at the age of 63. You know, we started believing that we had some kind of evil eye upon our family. You know, we're a little superstitious, and I know how that sounds, but you know, when so many bad things are happening to you and your family, and you don't know why, you start believing anything. When my kids started getting sick, they missed so much school that a caseworker showed up to my house. They asked me super invasive questions like, are you doing drugs? Are you abusing your children? No, it turns out that my kids were just hiding the bloody noses from me so they wouldn't scare me. And, you know, I'm a proud Latina mom, Mexicana. These questions really hurt my pride. You know what I mean? But there was nothing I could do. Then, really, the following year, in 2019, our state began to address the health and safety issues through Senate Bill 181. Now, this bill put restrictions on oil refineries. It limited fracking next to schools and residential areas. It even gave local control to local governments. You know, and as I sat there at that state capitol, listening to the doctors, to the experts, to the scientists, testifying how these companies are making our air unbreathable, our water undrinkable. You know, it clicked to me. I understood then. My family didn't have no evil eye. I was not a bad parent. You know, the problem was that they were destroying our environment. They were poisoning our environment. They were allowed to poison our environment. You know, I also realized the ugly truth that nobody was going to come and save us. It was my responsibility to protect my children. So I would fight for them with the heart of a mother. Now, I don't have a background in medicine or the environment. I mean, I studied business management in college. I was working at a local Mexican store, a Mexican Western wear store, selling boots and hats, and doing money wires. But I was a mom. And you don't want to mess with the Latina mom. I started organizing. I started going door to door, talking to my neighbors, asking everybody, anyone, I was like, hey, I'm Lucy. Do you know anybody that's sick? And you know what? Most of the time, the answer was yes. And that shook me. You know, one of my neighbors that's been in the community for like 53 years, he said to me, you know, Lucy, this is just how it is here in Commerce City. If you don't like it, just move, leave. You know, and I thought of leaving so many times. But then I thought, why would I rip my family away from the only community they've ever known? My son was 10 at the time. And he said to me, but Mama, what about my friends? We can't just leave them here. I said, you're right. We stay and we fight for justice. So I started talking to all those experts, the doctors, the scientists, anybody that would listen to me. And I asked them to translate this information in Spanish. Because you see, 70% of my community is Spanish speaking. I began to speak up and show up at platforms that we're normally not invited or included in. Like, I showed up to my local city council and I asked them for air monitors, okay? $50 air monitors. You know, these monitors would tell us what kind of poisons are we breathing? What is this that we're in the air? Is it safe? And you know, this would be the first step towards protecting our families. I was ignored. They smirked at me and said, "Thank you, Ms. Molina." These people were not going to help me. They were not going to help our community. They had already been driving through our community for decades. They already had a seat at the table. And they were not using it to protect our communities. So I decided to run for local office. Okay, guys. I didn't win. I didn't get a seat at the table. So it was time to flip that table. I was going to crash their party anyway. Eventually, in a historic move, after nearly a century of environmental injustice, the oil refinery next to my home was fined $9 million. $2.6 million went to the community it poisoned, and $5 million went right back to them. And that is environmental injustice. My Spanish-speaking neighbors are left out of important decisions that include them. We have to do more. We must do more to educate, to let them know what's been happening in their communities for decades. We need to be woke, raza. Then we can also empower them so they can fight back, so they can also be able to protect their families. And for those that are not living in these communities, we need your help too. The price of this climate crisis is too high for anybody of us, for anyone to do nothing. We don't all breathe the same air, drink the same water, and eat the same food today, but everybody will be like us. We are all connected. My grandma, my beautiful abuelita, she was a fighter, you know. She was a union leader for the labor movement. And I know she would be with me right now fighting this with me. I miss her so much. I don't want to lose my mother or my Mama Vicky. I don't want my children to lose their mother. And I don't want my children to lose their lives because of a problem that could be stopped. The future is now. Don't wait. Don't wait until your loved ones or the people that near you are impacted by environmental racism. Be on the side of environmental justice now. Not only for communities like mine, but for communities everywhere. We are all at our last breath. Gracias.